Hey, 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 welcome to the attic. I am Manadad. I am joined by my real life brother, Brobi Kenobi,
Hey, hey, hey.
frequent mythic drafter on Arena, and formerly you played on Magic Online. You had a very high ELO back in the day, back actually in Time Spiral days, right?
I think that they were Time Spiral days, 2007, 6-ish.
I mean, I
Is that right?
remember you getting me into some Time Spiral. I've forgotten more about this
I
format.
played some five-color sliver decks. I don't know if this is Time Spiral. This
Yeah,
is
that would
just
be Time
driving me.
Spiral
Okay.
block, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I was a 1900 limited player at some point in that.
So I've forgotten most things, and I've tried to forget some things, and just because this set is a condensation of the three like Time Spiral block sets, which is Time Spiral, Planar Chaos, and Future Sight, and they've just taken like their selection of cards that they think will make a good limited environment, plus are good for reprints to make Time Spiral Remastered here, and that's what we're talking about. So I've kind of tried to approach it as if it was a new set, kind of like we did with our Kaldheim review. So
Yeah,
that's what we're going to do.
it's basically new for me anyway. So
But you might remember and recognize some of these things. I've been through all the cards in detail. Brobi hasn't, so I'm going to be presenting stuff to Brobi and just getting his comments here. First thing, set releases March 19th. You will not be able to play it on Arena. It's on Magic Online only, and then obviously paper if you're lucky enough to play somewhere where people can play in person right now during the pandemic. 413 total cards. That's a big set. I think a normal large set is like 350, but that's because you got 121 cards in there that are what are called time shifted cards. So every pack has something from this time shifted sheet, and what that means is even though like normally these cards they're reprints and normally they would be all different rarities, in this set they're all approximately a mythic rarity. So obviously for these reviews I concentrate on the commons and uncommons, but this set is going to be driven because you're going to have rares, mythic rares, and also these time shifted cards, so you're going to see a lot of those, but I'm going to try to concentrate on the cards that you're going to see most of. So let's start off with some archetypes. We're talking about slivers. This is one of my favorites of all time. Magic mechanics. I went nuts and I just put like all the slivers up here. So slivers in this set, obviously in Time Spiral they were a little more spread out across the color pie. In this set they're more concentrated in Naya. So we got a bunch of whites, a bunch of reds, and then on the next slide I'll show you some of the greens also. We got this Hivestone as a rare. Up there is a colorless that turns all your creatures into slivers, so you can kind of use that to turn your deck into a sliver deck. And the Sliver Smith, which is a spell shaper that lets you discard cards and make 1/1 colorless slivers. But for slivers, the main ones you're going to be looking for at common here are that Sinew Sliver. All slivers get +1/+1. And when they came back after Time Spiral and reprinted slivers, they made it so only your slivers get +1s and all the sliver upgrade abilities. But in times, these are the original Time Spiral slivers, so these will actually have symmetrical effects. So if your opponents are playing slivers, you're gonna buff your opponent's slivers, so that's part of the risk of playing the slivers, I guess. But slivers is like a go wide. I think it's going to be a little bit aggro, although some of these are kind of more expensive. But the ones I would be looking to pick up are the Sinew Sliver, gives all slivers +1/+1. The low CMC sliver, Sidewinder Sliver, all slivers get flanking, which is actually an ability that's on a bunch of cards in this set, which is whenever they get blocked, the blocking creature gets -1/-1. It kind of makes combat really tough for your opponents. Also that two-headed sliver, giving all the slivers menace. At the time this set was out, it wasn't even called menace. It was like spelled out. They didn't keyword that ability yet. The homing sliver is not bad. Each sliver card has sliver cycling, so it lets you cycle it for 3. And the Bone Splitter sliver there, all slivers get +2/+0. And you could get the Fury Sliver there at uncommon at the top end. I also put the rares. There's a rare in white. There's a rare in red here, Sedge Sliver. It's a reference to old Sledge Troll. or Sedge Troll. And here's the green slivers. The one that you're really going to be fighting over here is the second one, Gemhide Sliver, because that card is just good in general. It's just a mana dork because it gets its own ability. But the ability, giving all your slivers the ability to tap for any color of mana just lets you play out a ton of slivers real fast. So if you're in slivers, you're going to have to really high pick Gemhide Sliver. And even if you're not in slivers, I think you're probably going to have to high pick that Gemhide Sliver. And then the Might Sliver is good because buffing all your slivers. It's just a base 4/4 for 5 anyway, so that's good. And the Spinneret Sliver, which is a 2/2 for 2 and giving your slivers reach. And then the Virulent Sliver is kind of fun, right? Giving all your slivers poisonous 1. If you can actually get a draft where you get a couple of those guys and they are at common, those abilities stack, so your slivers can start hitting and dropping a ton of poison counters.
Sweet.
So, and then the gold slivers, obviously, so there's no common, uncommon, just black or blue slivers. It's all Naya. Obviously, there's a Sliver Legion there as the build around for your Rainbow Slivers deck up in the top corner. But here, for the uncommon gold slivers, I would target the ones in Naya colors, so the Firewake Sliver and the Cautery Sliver and the Harmonics Sliver. Because those are going to be your main things. But this set you can splash, and we'll talk about mana bases later. And so Necrotic Sliver, Darkheart Sliver, Dormant Sliver. Dormant Sliver is really interesting. It can be something you bring in out of the sideboard against a sliver deck because it gives all slivers defender.
Mm-hmm.
You do have to worry, right? If they're going to play a bunch of slivers, they're going to start drawing cards. So having sacrifice effects with the Dormant Sliver can be pretty fun. So like that Darkheart Sliver, all slivers have sacrifices permanent, gain 3 life. Or the Necrotic Sliver, sacrifices permanent, destroy target permanent. With the Dormant Slivers, you can start, if you're doing Rainbow Slivers, you can do some fun stuff like that. Where you bring out the Dormant Sliver, build up your board, draw a bunch of cards, and then eventually sacrifice the Dormant Sliver and make your move.
I think that's the game plan with Dormant, would be a sack.
So yeah, Slivers deck. I'm calling these decks Archetypes, but it's not like Archetypes like they have in the modern sets. Even now that they've gone back and designed this in the modern day, they're really like synergy areas. Because as you'll see, there's all the cards in the set pretty much have like multiple modes to them. They're really complicated. So I think you kind of want to think about like, will my deck go down multiple paths, right? I've got a couple of these cards that work together and a couple of these cards that work together. And sometimes cards work across different I guess I'm calling here archetypes, but I don't think they're archetypes how we have been thinking of them, like on Kaldheim, where you have the kind of, uncommons that tell you what that color pair is supposed to do. Here the colors do all different kinds of things. It's a really complex, I think this format has a lot of depth, or at least they're trying to capture the depth of the triple time spiral format. So Suspend Storm is another one that there's a lot of themes across the cards. You got stuff like Joyous Time Bug that is gonna add or remove time counters from cards. I guess I should say what Suspend is. There's a Suspend cost. It's like an alternate cost for a card. Some of them at rare, you'll see there's a whole cycle of those that you can't even play them without paying the Suspend cost. And you put it and you exile it, and it kind of starts counting down every upkeep. And when the last one is removed, it gets cast. And if it's a creature, it's coming in with haste, which is another important part that people forget. So if you look at Keldrin Halberdier there, that's a 4/1 first strike for 5 mana. Or you can suspend it on your first turn, and then it's coming down turn 4 with haste as a 4/1 first strike. And at least as I recall, those cheap suspend cost creatures are quite good for that reason.
Yeah.
Obviously, if you draw it late, you're going to have to pay the full freight, which might be a little overcosted. But if you get it early, you pay very little. And the reason I group this with Storm is because you can actually try and line it up so that you are suspending your cards to all cast on the same turn, which is going to up your Storm count. And then you have cards like Empty the Warrens down there, which is a famous sorcery here. Creates 2 1/1 red goblin creatures, Storm. When you cast this spell, copy it for each spell cast before it this turn. So you can imagine if you can get 2 or 3 things coming off suspend on the same turn that you cast Empty the Warrens, you're going to get tons of goblins. You could get 6, 8, 10 goblins off an Empty the Warrens and just completely overrun people. So I picked out cards that are kind of like that. Simian Spirit Guide gives you that extra mana jolt. I don't think you're going to play that highly, but I mean, it's also a creature. So you can cast it or you can use it to get that extra mana. Rift Elemental works with time counters, and that's at common. I didn't think I would have to be drinking water this soon. Grape Shot is another famous Storm card. Just deals 1 damage to any target, but obviously when you're copying it with Storm, you can deal that damage how you want. So if you get 4 copies, you can send 2 of the copies at a 2/2 and 2 more and another 2/2. You can spread them around. Arcblade is part of this cycle at uncommon of stuff that you play it and then it self-exiles and comes back again, which is pretty cool. Haze of Rage is another one that's really good. It's an uncommon. So unlike Empty the Warrens is common and Grape Shot is common for your Storm cards, Haze of Rage is your red Storm card here. That's at uncommon, and it's board pump with buyback. So you can actually play it a couple times itself. It can kind of self-storm. You need a lot of mana, but it's pretty good that way. The Ignis I put in here because that can pop back to your hand, give you some mana. Coal Stoker likewise comes out, gives you a mana rebate, so it kind of helps you double spell on a turn. The Sand Mage at uncommon here can remove time counters or put time counters on stuff, which can be good if your opponents have something suspended. And the Storm Entity is also kind of a Storm payoff here because it gives you +1/+1 counter for each other spell cast that turn. And it's haste. And the reason haste is important is there's stuff like this Primal Force Mage. There's a lot of haste in this set for whatever reason. So you might see this Primal Force Mage and go, okay, well, thing that gives your creatures +3/+3 until end of turn when they come out, like they're not going to be able to attack, but because you have so many suspend cards and cards with haste, the Force Mage can actually be quite good at uncommon. There are rares that, like Joyra of the Gitu, will put you into suspend probably if you some put people into suspend if they draft that pack 1. So that's kind of the blue-red suspend, and I think a lot of the suspend is in blue-red, but there's suspend in all the different colors. I pulled out some, like Dirkwood Baloth is just a common 5/5 that suspends for 1 green. Knight of Circe.
Green red, get big suspend. Yeah,
green red, get big suspend, I think will definitely be a deck, or at least like a pocket of synergy in a deck, you know? The Corpulent Corpse, 3/3 fear, suspend. 5 for a black. Knight of Circe. This is a 2/2 flying flanking, suspend 3. Errant Ephemeron seemed real familiar to me. I think that was a really good card, even though it looks pretty overcosted as a 7 mana 4/4 flyer. But suspend 4, 2 mana, get that 4/4 flyer coming down 4 turns later. I think was good in that format, and I think will be good in this format. Veiling Oddity, you got a 2/3 that when the last time counter is removed from it, creatures can't be blocked this turn, which is a little bit like a blue aggro kind of thing, or will combine with aggro decks, which is not always blue thing. But because you have especially the cards from Planar Chaos, which were like, what if Magic's Color Pie was divided differently? You get these effects in other colors in this set that you're not used to, so that might be one of them. Riftwing Cloud Skate on the very end also, I think, was one I kind of vaguely recall playing a lot of. A 2/2 flyer that bounces something is pretty good. The other thing to look at on the text of these cards is this is not an optional bounce. Like a lot of the cards they design now comes down and you have an optional to bounce stuff. This one, you gotta bounce something. So if it's coming down on an empty board, like if you suspend it and then you don't get anything else out and your opponent doesn't get anything else out, you're gonna have to bounce itself back, which would be a bit of a feel bad, but you almost always have something your opponents to bounce back.
Yeah, you can return a land.
Yeah, that's true. Doesn't say non-land permanent. That's actually
all the permanent stuff is going to be like more like permanent based. Remember how it was?
Yeah.
Just what was the stack? The stacking was different back then too.
So they had damage on the stack back then. So that actually makes some of these cards will play differently. Even if you played the old format, they will play quite differently because of that damage on the stack thing. They do have split second is in this again and stuff like that, whereas like you couldn't mess with the stack. Another one that seems pretty well supported in this set is what I'm calling like Madness self-discard / Hellbent kind of deck. Obviously black is really strong for this, and this is another one I think a lot of people will be scared to play unless they're more experienced players, because causing your own stuff to discard is pretty it can be pretty feel bad. But well, what Madness is it lets you cast cards for discount if you're discarding it already. And so you have stuff like that Trespasser Ilvec, their second at the top from the left, which is just like a discard outlet, which will let you trigger Madness very reliably for 3 mana there. Stronghold Rats, similarly. Shadow, a lot of Shadow creatures will just not be able to be blocked. I guess we should say what Shadow is too. Shadow was this evasion ability that kind of like put your creatures on a different track. So they can only block creatures with Shadow, and they can only be blocked by creatures with Shadow. And you'll see a fair amount of Shadow in this set as an evasion ability.
It was like before Menace.
Yeah. Well, Menace wasn't keyworded as we saw with that sliver, but yeah. Yeah, I mean, it was an evasion ability that didn't, I guess, catch on so much.
It's coming back.
You got stuff like Smallpox, which is like symmetrical discard, but in your Madness deck, obviously, it's going to be a discard outlet for you. This Icar Slick one is really interesting there at common. Obviously, it's creature removal. Target creature gets -3/-3, but you can cycle it and then pay its Madness cost. So if you have 6 mana, you can actually like self-Madness it, because cycling counts as discarding the card. I mean, stuff like Dark Withering, right? Destroy target non-black creature at instant speed, Madness 1 black, versus if you're paying full freight 6 mana. I think the Madness deck is going to be quite good, and I think some people will just not draft it because they're scared of it. So I think if you're a spikier player, this might be a place to look, especially early on in the format, for an advantage. There's cards with Flashback in this set, which obviously work well with Madness. So you discard it, but then you can still play it from your graveyard, like Strangling Soot. Like stuff like Deep Cavern Imp, Echo, discard a card. And then I put Cutthroat Ildal there as Hellbent, has Shadow as long as you have no cards in hand. And so that seems very centered with black, but the second color is going to be blue, I think, for this Madness self-discard kind of theme, as they've done it. But there are these Spell Shaper cards in every color in this set. Looks like I didn't put the white one in, but anyways, what a Spell Shaper does is you pay like 1 mana or 3 mana, and you tap it and you discard a card and you get an effect that's kind of like a classic Magic card effect, like Green Seeker, search your library for a basic land card and put it into your hand, or Tolarian Sentinel, return target permanent you control to your hand. So you can get these effects, but it can also be a Madness outlet. So if you have Madness in your deck, you're going to want to look for these Spell Shapers, of which there are at least 1 in every color at common, and several at uncommon. And then just the additional blue support, you got stuff like Looter Il Core, which deals damage to an opponent, and then you draw and then discard. So it's a loot. And Careful Consideration, which is a draw discard, and Bonded Fetch, which is a draw discard. And then this Gathan Raiders, which is a cool card that we'll probably talk a little bit more about later, has Morph, which lets you play it face down as a 2/2 creature for 3 colorless mana. So you can actually play that card in any color deck. And it has Hellbent, so definitely probably the best in a Madness shell where you're trying to discard your whole hand. So you can make a 5/5 just by discarding a card and triggering Madness for yourself. Another thing you'll notice in the set is there are a lot of rebels in terms of like a tribe. And the thing with rebels is they have, some of them have this ability like on the Amaru Scout where you pay some amount of mana tap and you get to search your library for a rebel permanent with a converted mana cost, ceiling on it. And in this case, it's not always creatures. We do have one enchantment, which is this pacifism effect, Bound in Silence, there in the upper right. So you can actually get that with your rebel grabbers. So that's centered in white, I think most strongly in white, but also we have several rebels here in black. The Deep Cavern Imp, the Blight Speaker, the Wrathy Trapper, which is a really good one. You're going to want to probably fight for that because it's just good in any deck. Black tap target creature. It's pretty strong in the format, I think, or will be. And these uncommon ones. Big Game Hunter seems pretty good. I don't remember that one, but
Blight Speaker's a good card.
Any creature that comes down in Blight Speaker's a good one. Yeah, I mean, I'll get a couple Blight Speakers and just start tapping every turn, make people lose life, and you can also search up. Your Blight Speakers can search each other up, so it's kind of like a Whisper Squad that's more expensive.
It's like its own control build, kind of like Finish, but the Rebels deck is controlling them.
And we got Fungus and Saproling. This was another one I loved. I don't think it was ever that good.
No, it was good. I think it was one of the better ones.
You think so?
Yeah.
I mean, I think back to Fallen Empires where it was just like wait 3 upkeeps to make your 1/1 creature.
I'm pretty sure it was the best limited deck in the set, and then it was like Slivers right after that, but Slivers were hard to get.
There was this card called Sprout Swarm, which they wanted to put in this set, but they really couldn't figure out a way to do it without, because it's too busted, because it's Convoke Buyback.
Yeah, you buy back.
Maybe just make 2 Saprolings. So basically, at a certain point, it's just like starts paying for itself with the Saprolings you've made, and it just takes over a game at a certain point.
Yeah.
So that is not in this set, because that was like a 1-card win con with Saprolings. But anyway, you can definitely go wide with these Saprolings, as you can see. I like the Sporoloth Ancient there at common. It's a 4/4 for 5, and it's going to make all your Saprolings generate the 1/1, or all your Fungus generate the 1/1 Saprolings 33% faster, because it only takes 2 Spore counters to do it. And the Spore Sower Thallid at uncommon there will add spore counters. This spore counter, so it's going to double the speed. So
the Thallid Germinator was good, right? As well too.
I mean, that's just a good, solid common for that deck, I think.
Mm-hmm.
The ability to sacrifice Saprolings to buff your creatures is a good ability.
Yeah, common it was like it was well supported.
I actually like the Deathspore Thallid better. The ability to sacrifice your Saprolings to give things -1/-1.
Yeah.
Seems more useful to me than the Thallid Germinator. But obviously that's the only black Thallid card. You could splash for it pretty easily, but that's there's 2 white cards I saw that seem to fit into this deck, the Pallid Mycoderm and the Mycologist.
Mm-hmm.
the Mycoderm at least gives all your fungus and sapperling +1/+1 when you sacrifice, so that's a little better. But the Mycologist is not, I don't think, a high pick, but it's uncommon for some reason. Sacrificing to gain life, I guess, could be useful in some narrow cases, but it's not even a fungus itself. Anyway, going back to that top row just there at the end, though, Pendelhaven Elder, I threw this on the slide because, not only can you make 1/1 goblins and 1/1 slivers, I think the deck that's going to be making the most 1/1s here is this fungus sapperling deck, and this is just a 1/1 that taps to give all your 1/1s +1/+2, which is a nice little kind of anthem. There's a couple of these rares that will be putting people into the deck. Thelen of Havenwood is pretty good. Each fungus gets +1/+1 for each spore counter on it. So you can just imagine your whole board plussing up every turn.
Plus a Gaia's Anthem or two in the deck.
Yeah, Gaia's Anthem is in this set, as you see there on the right. And Sapperlings get +1/+1 from Thelenite Hermit, which is also a morph card, which can be a nice little surprise. And you're probably gonna want to morph it, because when you turn it up face up, you get 4 1/1 green Sapperling tokens. The Utopia Mycon's interesting, sacrificing Sapperlings to get mana. I think that might be an underrated ability, especially if you're trying to splash stuff.
Yeah.
So anyways, that is the Sapperling deck. Another deck, and we haven't played this exact format, so this is a lot of theory crafting. We'll have to wait and see how things shake out, but I sense there's sort of a theme with like morph and enter the battlefield triggers. They've got commons like the White Mane Lion and the Dreamstalker, which are these things that come down and return stuff to your hand so you can play it again and get the enter the battlefield triggers again. And there's stuff like Momentary Blink, which you can actually play twice because of the flashback. That will blink stuff and give you that enter the battlefield or leave the battlefield trigger a bunch of times.
Dreamstalker is bomb.
Dreamstalker
right?
has some good combos with it. Again, it's got that thing, return a permanent you control to its owner's hand. So if you don't have the right board or the right deck set up for it, it's going to be bouncing something and stealing your tempo. A 1/5 for 2 is a good deal, but like you're going to be stealing some tempo from yourself.
Right.
But I think there's ways to get advantage out of that. So like there's an enchantment that when it leaves the battlefield destroys the creature it was attached to. So with Dreamstalker, you can play that on your opponent's creature and then bounce it back and then replay it, and then blink the Dreamstalker and bounce it back again. You can just like destroy your
bounce the Dreamstalker.
Yeah, exactly. Stonecloaker is another one. Comes in, returns a creature you control to its owner's hand, and it also has an ETB trigger, although it's just exile a card from a graveyard. There'll be certain decks where that's useful. 3/2 Flying Flash is good anyway, baseline. Stormfront Riders, when it enters, you return 2 creatures you control to your hand, but you're going to get soldiers for doing that. 1/1 soldiers, and as we saw, 1/1s can get some buffs and things in this set very easily. Sand Mage, obviously you can do lots of weird loops and things with suspended cards.
The Riders is an ability that stays on the board, right?
Yeah. So, right, you get that rider out, and if you have a lot of these bounce creatures, you can play 1, bounce 1, play 1, bounce 1, and just be generating a bunch of 1/1 white soldiers. So that, that little, these little mini synergy pockets can create win conditions for you. Brine Elemental was part of this combo that was called Pickle Lock because of Brine, where you would like morph it or blink it, turn it face up, and then somehow turn it face down again, I guess, or maybe bounce it back to your hand and turn it face up again. You need a lot of mana for it, but it was possible to do, and apparently it was good in standard at the time.
I'm trying to think about it because it rings a bell.
But anyways, in the limited environment, it's a 5/4 for 6 baseline, which is in this set is actually okay. But the morphing for 7 and making your opponent skip their untap step can be pretty good. And obviously, if you can do that a couple times in a row, or do that a couple times in a game, you're just stealing so much tempo. You're getting so much advantage. So don't sleep on Brine Elemental, even though it is kind of an expensive card. I think one of the lead designers of the set, this guy Gavin Verhey, talked about on his show. He was, I think, one of the originators of the Pickle Lock deck, and so I'm pretty sure he designed the set to support his favorite little pickles combo with Brine Elemental. Dread Return, obviously you can get ETBs just returning stuff from your graveyard, so I put that there. Fire Maw Kavu comes in, deals damage to creatures, which is pretty awesome. So if you can replay that a bunch of times or blink that a bunch of times in red. You do have to worry, there's a bunch of these creatures that have the echo cost, which is kind of like you have to pay to keep them around.
Mm-hmm.
They'll die the next turn if you don't pay the echo.
Well, you want that one to leave the battlefield, so it's not.
Yeah, but there's other ways to leave the battlefield other than the echo.
Yeah, but it deals 4 damage. I mean, it's a 2 and then a 4.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, 6 is 6 mana. Yeah, you can keep the body around. If you got nothing else to do with your 6 mana.
What happens if you blink a card like that after you cast it? Does it?
Well, it's going to leave the battlefield, so you get to leave the battlefield trigger, and it's going to enter the battlefield again. So so playing Momentary Blink on your Fire Maw Kavu is going to get you another 6 damage to throw around, split between 2 and 4.
So if you bounced it with when it was at the... Oh, wait, no, it has to leave the battlefield. Oh, yeah, you could blink it, and then it leaves the battlefield, does 4 damage back to your hand. Yeah.
Yeah, you can bounce it back to your hand, yeah. It does 4 damage. Or you blink it, you're going to get the leave the battlefield trigger, and then when it comes back from the blink, it's going to get the enter the battlefield trigger. But then you're going to get the echo trigger the next upkeep, but it'd probably be worth it.
I mean, yeah, if you want to.
I mean, I could imagine a deck that's just a bunch of momentary blinks and stuff like Fire Maw Kavu.
Yeah, if you get that combo online, it could be pretty good. That's probably what your dream stock. Anyway.
Yeah, I didn't put everything that has enter the battlefield or leave the battlefield abilities on this slide.
Yeah.
But that's just something to be aware of. I think it's really well supported in the set, and there's lots of cards that kind of cross synergy things and stuff like White Mane Lion or Dreamstalker or Stonecloaker or Stormfront Riders that might not look so great because you're like, oh, I have to bounce a bunch of my stuff. Those will
no biggie.
Those will actually be pretty good if you have enough, the enter the battlefield, leave the battlefield stuff in your deck. For whatever reason, I think just white touches on so many of these synergy things. It's going to be good in Slivers. It's going to be good in Rebels. And I think there's also just a mono white or like white with a small splash aggro deck in this format that seems to be pretty well supported. You got stuff like Ivory Giant, which is a suspend just for 1 mana, and when it finally comes down, it's going to tap all non-white creatures, so you're going to get that big swing coming in.
Yeah.
Celestial Crusader, giving all the white creatures +1/+1, and it flashes in with split second, so it's like a combat trick too. Is really powerful. Shade of Trocare, I vaguely remember this being pretty good when I played. Again, just suspends for 1, and it pumps with white mana, so you're going to want to be heavy white to play it, but it's pretty powerful. And then you have like 2-drops like the Benalish Cavalry or the Knight of the Holy Nimbus that are just solid 2-drops. This Calciderm is interesting.
Yeah, the Griffin God and on like a Cavalry can just roll deep. This is the deck. This is my deck. I remember this one.
Yeah, I think this looks like one you're going to be jamming a lot because, you like the aggro decks anyway, and I think white looks to me like the strongest aggro color in this format. I could be, there could be other ones.
I've crushed the 90s with white weenies, Savannah Lions, all the way.
Even these 3-drops, Outrider and Core Armory Seekers I don't think are super outclassed in this format. And these stuff with vanishing, obviously you're going to try to win fast. The spell Fortify is pretty good for like a go wide deck.
Yeah.
The other thing, it looks like flyers. Just having a deck with a good amount of flyers is going to be a strategy, as it often is in limited. And just the main thing I want to point out, I mean, obviously most of your flyers are white-blue, as is traditional in Magic, but you have like green here has 2 flyers at common, which you would probably not expect to see. And that's the part of the color shifting thing.
The Drake.
The Tabby Drake and the giant Dusk Wasp. I think the Dusk Wasp is actually going to be pretty good. It's a bit expensive and a bit of a long suspend, but a 3/3 flyer is pretty good in this format.
Yeah, I remember playing it. It was good back in the day. It was
And there's this Deep Cavern Imp, but the echo cost is discard a card. But obviously, if you're the Madness deck, that could be a positive, not a drawback. And a 2/2 Flying Haste is no joke there in black. Not much to say about that. You can definitely play Control. One of the fun things, again, with the color shifting is white has 2 counter spells. One at common, Mana Tithe, and one at uncommon, Rebuff the Wicked, which I actually think Mana Tithe is going to play really well in your white aggro decks. Because you'll, every once in a while leave 1 white mana open and just completely get somebody who's trying to lay down a big blocker to stop your attacks. But you can also use it in Control. You got Spell Burst, which is a counterspell with Buyback, which is pretty awesome. The Logic Knot, which is a counterspell with Delve, which is pretty good. The Spiketail Drakeling, which is just a like super force spike that sits around on the battlefield as a 2/2 flyer, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Black has a suspend discard spell, which I think is a bit slow, but we'll see. I didn't put that on the slide.
Blue-white flyers is a good deck too here.
You just like mixing Control with the flyers.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's stuff like this at the very end here. Cryptic Annelid is going to let you see 6 cards deep in your deck. So, as I said, this format, you're going to basically have 2 rares in every pack. You're going to have the time-shifted cards, a lot of which are pretty bomby, and you're going to have your mythic or rare slot, some of which are pretty strong. So this Annelid, I think you're actually going to want to take that. It's a 1/4 body that kind of holds down the ground and also will dig you for your big bombs. And then even stuff, I think you probably like this, Think Twice.
Yeah.
2 mana, draw a card, flashback another 3 later in the game. Draw another card.
Right.
And then at uncommon, this Enslave, where it lets you take a creature from your opponent. I think, that effect is always good. At 6 mana, it's a little expensive, but that effect is always good and limited.
That was always good.
Then you can build Voltron. I know this is another one that you like to theory craft around. This is more supported with the time shifted and rare cards. There's some that will put you into drafting a lot of enchantments and trying to make a really big creature. But there's no indestructible at this time, but there is regenerate. So like the Meyer Boa there on the very right, you can have a 2/1 that regenerates for only a green, and you can start stacking enchantments on it. You could also put stuff on like Outrider in core that lets you just throw the damage off somewhere else. And there's at uncommon here, there's a nice enchantment, Keen Sense, that gives your creature ability to draw a card whenever it gets through for damage. So as long as you're playing that carefully, don't let your opponent 2-for-1 you. You're going to get the card back on that.
The Knight of the Holy Nimbus is... that White Winnie's deck is mean.
Yeah, is that what you're most excited for right now?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Your opponent can pay to have it not regenerate, which is interesting. But it's just
eventually. but
2/2 flanking is pretty, and 2/2 flanking that self regenerates unless your opponent's pay is pretty good.
yeah. Griffin Guide's a sweet card.
So let's talk about the removal in the set. Again, it's going to be like an older set. White actually has some decent removal. You got this Judge Unworthy, which I think is probably the worst of them here. It is instant. You're going to scry 3, and then you can deal damage to an attacking or blocking creature. So I guess if your deck is full of expensive cards, it probably gets better. But if you're in a white deck, I think you're probably a lot of times going to be playing lower CMC or mana value, lower mana value cards, I should say, now that they've changed that wording on that. So I don't think Judge Unworthy is going to be a high pick, but Temporal Isolation I think will be a good pick. It's a flash enchantment. In a pinch, you can make one of your creatures shadow that can absorb absorb some damage from another shadow thing, but you're mostly going to be playing it on your opponent's stuff, just turning their creature into something that can't block your stuff and can't really deal damage back to you.
Correct.
And Sunlance is the white lightning bolt-ish thing. 3 damage to target non-white creature. I mean, for 1 mana, that's pretty good. And then 5 mana, destroy target non-white permanent. Again, that can hit lands too. Salt Blast. For your top end removal with white. Looks pretty good. So I'm bullish on white right now. Blue, here's that one I mentioned before, Reality Acid, that definitely gets better in the blink deck. Enchant permanent. Again, you can enchant lands. Vanishing 3. So it's kind of bad removal if you don't have a way to blink it or bounce it. But if you do, when it leaves the battlefield, enchanted permanent's controller sacrifices that permanent. So Pongify, this is a staple in EDH because blue doesn't get a lot of instant speed remove any creature for 1 blue mana. I don't know how it's going to be in this format. Like a 3/3 green ape is not necessarily a joke, but it is 1 blue mana. People were low on Raven Form, which was like 3 mana exile.
Yeah, that
make a 1/1. But that was call time. This is an older format.
Was there a charm
3/3
in each color?
I'm not, there was, but I don't know. I know the green charm and the blue charm are in here. I don't think they put the charms in for the other colors.
Okay.
In this set, because I think there was a red charm that removed time counters. I don't remember seeing it when I was putting this together. But there could have been charm cycles in multiple sets. But anyways, Piracy Charm has that second mode, which gives +2/-1. Can you think of it as removal? I guess. I mean, these modal spells end up being better than you think oftentimes, I think, because even though each of the effects is not worth a card, it makes it more likely that you're gonna always have a situation where it's useful. And then Erratic Mutation, which is kind of a similar thing where you're gonna reveal cards on the top of your library.
A crazy one.
So controlling the top of your library is gonna be kind of key. And it obviously can be used offensively as well as defensively. I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to play that card. I'll have to wait and see how people are playing it. But the Reality Acid I'm definitely going to play because I think you're going to be able to get those combos where you're bouncing it a bunch more than you think. And maybe people are going to read it and go, Vanishing 3, it's going to take too long to destroy the thing I want to destroy.
No, you're right. I mean, it was good. It was good. And you identified the combo earlier with it. That'd be played well.
Black. See, this is an old set. Black and red are going to have a ton of removal. We're only talking about common and uncommon. Obviously, like the time shifted cards have stuff. Like Path to Exile is on the time shifted sheet, stuff like that. But just in terms of what's at common and uncommon, black is really strong here. Big Game Hunter, we talked about. A creature that kills a creature is always good, and has the madness thing. Assassinate, destroy target tap creature. That's usually a white effect. it's usually, especially at sorcery speed, it's kind of meh. And black, as you can see, has a lot of good removal, so I'm not super high on that one. Sudden death is really good. Split second, target creature gets -4/-4 is pretty good.
Tendrils was good when, if I recall back.
I'm going to get to tendrils. Premature burial. Apparently, there was this cycle where Time Spiral had like looking backwards, destroy a creature, and the other one was like destroy a creature that entered this turn for the present, and destroy a creature that's going to enter next turn or something. Anyways, premature burial is part of that cycle. It's 2 mana destroy a creature, but it is, I don't know how it's going to play. You're obviously going to have some hard decisions about when you fire it off. Ichor Slick seems really good as a thing that can self-trigger madness, and just giving a creature -3/-3 is actually going to kill a lot of creatures in this format. There's a lot of X1s in the format too, so you can't sleep on the stuff that only gives -1. So tendrils, I remember vaguely that you were really high on this card. The instant speed, deal X damage to a creature, gain X life. X is the number of swamps you control. So obviously you want to be heavier black.
Either that, was there, I don't know if there was an Orzhov deck or it was a mono black deck. I mean, maybe I was just into playing mono black. I don't know, but I remember tendrils well.
Yeah, I remember tendrils being very good. So
Strangling Soot as well.
Strangling Soot also very good. This thesis, destroy target creature its controller loses life equal to its power plus its toughness.
Yeah.
2 mana suspend 5. I mean, I don't think you're almost ever going to play it for not suspend cost unless you're super heavy black. Right. But that can be like, if your opponent has a bunch of bombs, that can be quite good. It just even coming out of the sideboard, I think. Nightshade Assassin. This is 2/1 first strike, and when it enters the battlefield, you can reveal black cards from your hand, give a creature -X/-X, and it can also madness in. Enslave we talked about, and then the Feebleness as just a flash aura. And there are enough X1s in the format, and maybe it's more of a control card that you'll play just to give stuff -2, the -2 to power is going to be useful in control just to survive long enough to take over the game. But black is pretty stacked here, and then red is even more stacked. You got 2 of these split cards. Rough deals 2 damage to each creature without flying. Tumble deals 6 damage to each creature with flying. So those are like board wipes in red. Dead and Gone, 2 damage to target creature for 1 mana. It's essentially a shock. Can't go face, but and Gone, return target creature you don't control to its owner's hand. So if your opponent only has big stuff, you can at least bounce it. Sudden Shock, which is a shock but with split second, which is this weird ability that's kind of like an advanced player ability. You have to understand the stack, which is like when you're playing instant speed effects, they all kind of stack up and then go in reverse order. But once somebody plays a split second, nobody can respond again. So that includes like regenerating, I think. So like if you sudden shock a regenerating creature, it's not going to be able to regenerate and come back, which is pretty cool. Shivan Meteor is really interesting. They said that this was kind of a design mistake because 13 damage to a creature essentially kills any creature. And that is really more of a black effect to be able to kill any creature. But there's stuff like Stuffy Doll in this set. So you can actually 13 damage your own Stuffy Doll to hit your opponent for 13.
Oh yeah, I remember that. That was a combo. Big time.
Yeah, so just knowing these cards are out there, common and uncommon, can help you when you open these rares and figure out some of these combos. Stuffy Doll with the, even these board wipes dealing 2 damage to each creature without flying can work with Stuffy Doll.
Always won some games with Stuffy Doll. put it that way.
Riddle of Lightning.
Awesome games too, Stuffy Doll.
Stuffy Doll is, don't underrate Stuffy Doll.
Don't.
It's an 0-1 that is kind of indestructible and deals damage that it takes right back to the person. Right back to the opponent. Riddle of Lightning, scry 3, reveal the top card of your library, deals damage equal to the card's converted mana cost. I don't know about these scry effects, these scry removal effects. I'd rather have something like Rift Bolt, just suspend 1, deals 3 damage to any target. It's just a slow lightning bolt. Orcish Cannonade, I think, is actually decent. 2 damage to any target, 3 damage to you, but you draw a card. If you're in an aggro deck or whatever, you'll... and that was a reference to the Orcish Artillery back in the day, I think. Had the ability to tap, but it dealt 3 damage to itself and it would die. Anyways, it's much better on an instant. Conflagrate. This one's tricky to evaluate. XX in a red is much worse than Fireball. Because your baseline 3 mana deal 1 damage, 5 mana deal 2 damage. It does Flashback, but I don't think I'll be picking that too highly. Prodigal Pyromancer, I think this one's pretty good.
Yeah.
It's
any target.
Prodigal Sorcerer, color shifted to red, 1 damage to any target. Yeah, you can sit back and ping with your black pingers too. And as I said, there's enough creatures that are X1 in this format.
Stuffy Doll, Shivan Meteor.
That things are just gonna... Yeah. Lightning Axe is another one I think people might sleep on a little bit. Because it is an additional cost you have to discard or pay 5. But there's so much madness running around that sometimes you're gonna be happy to discard. And instant speed deal 5 damage is no joke.
Yeah, definitely not.
Grape Shot we talked about. That's the Storm one. Fire Makabu we talked about. That's a creature that comes down and deals damage. Arcblade we talked about. Suspends and just keeps coming back and dealing damage. And Strangling Soot we talked about. I just have this on this page because the Flashback is red, so you can actually, if you have a reliable way to get it into your graveyard, like with Madness things like the Lightning Axe, you can still just play it in a red deck. Green. All I could find for green here, this is pre-fight spell effects, I guess. You got Utopia Vow, which can make your opponent's creature not able to attack or block, but then they get to use it as a Birds of Paradise. And you got Thornwheeled Archer. I just threw in because it's a 2/1 with Reach and Death Touch, so it'll block and kill pretty much anything. But green is not your color if you want removal.
I think green has the Thallid and Saproling and Slivers base deck.
Yeah, green is going to help you splash more, right? There's more color fixing.
Level up like those routes, if I recall.
And there is enchantment and artifact removal. I don't include that here, but there's good plentiful enchantment and artifact removal reprinted in this set, like Seal of Primordium or whatever the enchantment you can sacrifice to destroy an enchantment or artifact. Combat tricks. White has a bunch of flash creatures here. The Stonecloaker, the Mind Sensor, the Crusader. Crusader, mind you, even has Split Second. You got Temporal Isolation, which actually flashes in. This Thrill of the Hunt has the flashback cost in white. Momentary Blink is in white with the flashback cost in blue. Fortify is good, right? Because that'll be defensive and offensive, depending on what you need. Almost always probably going to use the offensive one, but maybe you have a creature you want to save with it for 3 mana. And I guess I threw Judge Unworthy on here just because it's target attacking or blocking creature. Blue, good combat tricks here. You got stuff that bounces like Snapback and Wipe Away. flash creature, Crookclaw Transmuter. I actually recall this being one that would get people a lot.
Yeah.
Flashing in and switching a creature's power and toughness can really mess with combat.
3/1 flying after the fact too.
And then just leaves behind a 3/1 flyer.
Right, if it like causes a wonky combat trade.
And Piracy Charm, you can actually mess with combat quite a bit with the +2/-1. With a morph effect here, you got the Shaper Parasite. When it's turned face up, a creature gets +2/-2 or -2/+2. That's another good way to mess with combat. Bewilder. This effect is costed much less nowadays. Target creature gets -3/-0. Draw a card. You might still play it. I don't know. Black, you got this Core Dirge that's going to be a damage redirect spell. Sudden Death, I think it's just, one of the better removal spells anyway. But I also put it here under combat tricks because of the -4/-4 can also combine to bring down something even bigger during combat. Feebleness, similarly. And then Muckdrub is a 3/3 flash creature, so if your opponent has the open mana or the ability to madness it in for even less mana, something to watch out for. It also has this weird ETB ability that can redirect a spell that targets a single creature. So if your opponent like plays a kill spell or something, you can redirect it to your Muckdrub and save your guy.
Is it a creature that you control or just a creature? Could you like trade a pump spell or something?
Targets only a single creature. So any creature. Yours or your opponent's, yeah. You can redirect a pump spell with it.
Or like some sort of ability. Yeah.
So red. Not a lot. But Brute Force is the color shifted Giant Growth is in here. And especially aggro decks, that's going to be no joke. +3/+3. If your opponent has one red mana open, you're really going to have to watch out for that. And I guess as a counter to how good white is looking here, they did put in Sulfur Elemental, which is a flash split second. White creatures get +1/-1. So mess with that. If you're expecting that +1/+1 guy to come down split second, you split second first. Green, there's the green charm. You can give a creature flying with it. So I put it here. Thrill the Hunt, I think this is actually pretty good. A combat trick that you can recur with the flashback. Strength in Numbers, I vaguely remember playing a bunch of. Giving a creature +X/+X and trample, where X is the number of attacking creatures.
Oh yeah, that was a card.
And something I was watching, somebody pointed out, you can use it defensively too. If your opponent's swinging with all their Saproings, you can actually block and buff one of your creatures with it. Even though it seems like it's a attack only thing with the trample, but just keep that in mind. Might of Old Krosa is one that's played a ton. Target creature gets +2/+2, but if you cast it during your main phase, it's given +4/+4.
Is that an uncommon now?
That's uncommon. That's played in like poison decks though, so that's a classic card that's stuck around. And Scrib Ranger, I think this is going to get a lot of people. It's a flash creature. Obviously, you're not going to flash it in on you could flash it in Chump Block. It does have protection from blue, but the cool thing about it is you can return a force to untap target creature. So your opponent might think you got a good blocker tap down and make their swing, and then you just flash this in for 2, bounce a force back, untap your blocker, and really wreck them. Let's talk about the lands in this set. I mean, the main thing to keep in mind is these lands at the bottom. This is your only kind of dual lands in the set, is these storage lands, which are very slow, to say the least. Taps to add colorless. I mean, at least they don't come into play tap, but then you got to store up counters on them. And eventually you can, if you can get like 2 or more counters, then you can start to get out, a burst of mana with them.
Do they have the other Urza lands?
No, they do
Just
not.
Urza's Factory.
Just Urza's Factory. Which is slow, but in the late game, if you're a control deck or something, I guess 7 mana tap, create a 2/2 every turn. Can be a win condition. Terramorphic Expanse is going to be another one. I think it will be picked pretty highly. It's the original Evolving Wilds, same card, different name.
The Urborg.
Urborg is interesting with the tendrils, right? It is at rare.
Yeah.
The stuff like Urborg, Swarmyard, Vesuva. There's some interesting lands in the rare slots.
Makes that deck a lot better, though.
One I didn't put on here is there's a rare white land called Ruins of Trocaire or Flagstones of Trocaire. That when it gets destroyed, you go get a plains, and there's a couple things that let you sacrifice lands or blow up your own land and blow up your opponent's land. There's a couple little combos with it where it could actually be a better than a plains in your deck. But it is at rare, so I don't think you'll probably get it late. In terms of fixing, it's really mostly green. You got one good colorless fixer with Chromatic Star, which is the little thing that just filters your mana, draw a card.
The Gemhide is the key to the 5 color slivers.
Gemhide is the key to a lot of this, I think. Edge of Autumn, Search for Tomorrow are also quite good. You play that in 5. You play both of those in 5 color slivers also.
Uh-huh.
Obviously, you'd rather have Gemhide. And Utopia Vow in a pinch. I think Utopia Vow will be mostly used to eliminate your opponent's creatures, but your deck is really starved for fixing. Another weird thing to see is blue gets this one Spell Shaper here at Common, the Dreamscape Artist.
Mm-hmm.
So discard a card, sacrifice a land, and you put 2 basic lands onto the battlefield, not even tapped, and shuffle your library. So you can,
He's good.
You can, in a board stall, he just sits out, takes all the lands out of your deck, and then you're drawing only gas, and obviously a madness triggerer. So top uncommons. Do you remember this card, Tromp the Domains?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Some stuff I was watching, people were saying this was very good in the triple time spiral old days, and I think it will be too. It's a 6 mana overrun, but especially if you're going multicolor, it could be quite powerful. Giving just a handful of Saprolings +4/+4 or something in trample is ridiculous. Clockwork Hydra, 5 mana 4/4 that can kind of wind its way up and deal some damage. I think is actually decent in this format. As I said, Arcblade is my pick for these things that self-exile and keep coming back. A lot of these we talked about. Imperiosaur, I didn't talk about. It's a 5 for 4, and you just have to make sure you're only spending mana produced by basic lands to cast it, which I think won't be hard and limited. So that's kind of cool. And it's a dinosaur. I wonder if they added that later. Green has card draw there with Harmonize. Just 4 mana, draw 3 cards.
Mm-hmm.
Very solid uncommon. It's played a lot in EDH. Lightning, Might Sliver, we talked about all those. I look for stuff that's more like either just a good baseline card in any deck or stuff that's going to cross a lot of these archetypes that I'm looking at.
Where's Stuffy Doll at?
It's a rare. It's a rare. But it's not a top uncommon. I didn't even pull the top rares and mythics and stuff. I mean, there's a lot of good cards. I think for that reason, removal will be very good in this format. Stuff like Salt Blast, Shivan Meteor, stuff that can really remove the bombs. Sudden death won't remove everything. Yavimaya Dryad, it's a 2/1 that grabs a forest, puts it onto the battlefield tapped. So it's just creature plus ramp. Sporso or Thalid, you said that should be good. I think we talked about the rest of those. Let's talk about the commons. So why did I put Gathan Raiders under colorless? As we mentioned before, morph is a colorless effect, and then to morph it up, you just have to discard a card, so you don't need to be in red at all to play this. So when you're looking through your packs, just, don't immediately ignore a card just because it's red, because it might be Gathan Raiders. And I think it's a solid card. Chromatic Star and Terramorphic Expanse are just good fixers. There's not a ton of colorless in this set at common and uncommon, so tis what it is. White, I chose the 2 removal cards, Temporal Isolation, Bound in Silence, and Momentary Blink. So removal and then the blink effects, I think, synergize with so many things in the format. I think your pick order is going to change really dynamically in this draft, as I said, because of all the weird time-shifted cards that are build-arounds and stuff. So knowing the top commons, uncommons is maybe going to be less informative in this set, because it's really going to be like, what is good in my deck?
It's going to be more like there'd be a couple bombs that you're going to build around. It's going to be like a core set sort of feel, because the playables are just sort of meh.
Yeah, I mean, if there's a common that's decent, like, a 4/4 flying, suspend 4, it's gonna be good.
Oh yeah, that being said, there's of course good commons, but
so for blue, I chose these 2 flyers. Obviously you have to have the double blue pips to get the Spiketail Dragling, but a 2/2 flyer for 3 that can also counter a spell later and your opponents just have to, it sits out there, your opponents have to play around it. It's just nasty. So I think that's going to be a really strong common. And Fathom Seer, the ability to morph and get some cards out of it in the late game when you don't mind bouncing some islands back to your hand.
It's a good card. Yeah.
I just thought, it's probably good in the early, it's good enough in the early game and really good in the late game. And then black, Tendrils of Corruption. I chose that. Strangling Soot. And the Wrathy Trapper, which is just good outside the Rebels deck, but also really good in the Rebels deck. Just a solid 2-drop. Doesn't die to the pinger. Not much more to say about black. Let's move to red. So we got removal, just basic removal with Rift Bolt here. The Halberdier, based on my vague memories and how good I think Suspend is going to be. Could be that there are other commons that are better than it, but I think it'll be decent in any deck. You'll be happy to have a 4/1 first strike.
Yeah, I think you'll like opening that with your first turn.
And Empty the Warrens. I mean, if you haven't seen there's a thing in Magic Design that's called the Storm Scale, because Storm is like the top of the scale in terms of like a powerful effect. So don't sleep on Storm. The ability to just like save up a bunch of cheap spells and then make a ton of goblins is just going to win games. So for green, I think you're going to use green to splash those bombs a lot of the time. So Gemhide Sliver, Edge of Autumn, possibly Search for Tomorrow. Possibly could just be green is just the best for splashing. But I threw in, if you want like just a common creature, a 5/5 body that suspends for 1 green with Dirkwood Baloth, I thought would be pretty solid. And that is my evaluation of Time Spiral Remastered. What do you think?
Oh, well, sweet. I'm excited to play it. I'll get my Magic Online chops back up.
Yeah. If you watch this far, subscribe. But let me know. I put a lot of effort into making these slides, as bad as they are.
Oh, you did good.
But yeah, it's interesting. Like this kind of like remastering a format. They clearly put a lot of thought into this, and they're so good at making limited formats now. I have a lot of confidence that this format is going to be it's going to kind of capture how fun and dense and interesting the old Time Spiral format was. And adding the new time shifted cards, which are time shifted backwards now instead of forwards, is going to add, like, it's going to play differently because there's so many of these cards like Thoughtseize and what have you that are weren't in the original Time Spiral, but will be in this one. Also, a little tip: if you are playing in paper and you open a foil time shifted card, you probably just want to take it. I read somewhere that there might be as few as like 1,200 of any given time shifted card in foil. Like, that's how rare they're going to be for the foil ones.
Oh, nice.
So if you like open a foil, I don't know, what's the Ancient Den, the white land that probably nobody's going to want to take in limited because you'd have to have some weird artifact synergy that's not really in the set. But if it's the foil one, like, there aren't that many copies of that out there. You might just want to take that. Right. Probably going to be worth a couple bucks. I mean, I don't know. What do you think about having cards in the old border, reprinted in old border that never were in old border?
Yeah, I think it's all fun. I mean, I think anything they can do like this is great. I just wish they had put it on across all formats because it's so hard to play some of these old sets clocked on Magic.
It would be so fun on Arena, but adding some of these things to Historic would be great.
I understand they have probably challenges doing that. But
I think this set is probably one of the most complex to program. Like, obviously, these cards are already all programmed into Magic Online, so they don't have to spend on the programming. They did commission some new art for some of the cards, but
not everybody's playing like tabletop Magic right now, and that's the other thing. I mean, it'd be cool if you could go play this at your,
yeah. Normally you would go and play it at your LGS. I think this, if you like Modern Horizons or like one of these sets that's really dense, has a lot of keywords, this will scratch a similar itch.
But get a box of boosters and
get a box and draft with your friends after the pandemic.
Yeah.
If you can find a box. I don't know how many they're printing.
Yeah. Maybe don't get a box of boosters.
So I am Manadad MTG. I guess you're probably watching this on YouTube, but if not, go subscribe to me on YouTube and follow me on Twitch. And Brobi is also on Twitch. Brobi Kenobi
not really
MTG.
Streaming much on there due to
not
computer access.
Much right now, but maybe one day again.
Yeah, I would have streamed the Invitational yesterday if I had a computer worth handled it all.
Yeah. Yeah, watch him. He's an even better player than I am. I taught him everything I know. Now he's teaching me.
No, I'm not.
All right. Well, thanks for joining me here in the attic. I've been Manadad. Remember, Magic is a game so fun, even dads can enjoy it. Adios.
Later.